Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurikacharya Ashtotter the Srimad of Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurikacharya Ashtotter the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gītā Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, so Bhakti Mahima says here on text 15? 15, okay, 15. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the second day of July 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-gītā as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in text 15 of chapter 5, entitled Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness, page 242. Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Nadati kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muyanti jantavaha. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muyanti jantavaha. Ami. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. No more magnifying glass needed? No more magnifying? Got the new glasses. Okay, word by words, unless there's anyone online. Okay. Na, never. Adate accepts kasyachit, anyone's papam, sin. Na, nor cha, also, eva, certainly, sukritam, pious activities, vibhuhu, the Supreme Lord. Ajnanena, by ignorance, avritam, covered, jnanam, knowledge, tena, by that, muhyanti, are bewildered, jantavaha, the living entities. Translation. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport. The Sanskrit word vibhu means the Supreme Lord, who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires, but the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or the Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul, as one can smell the fragrance of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not therefore omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Eshu yeva sadhu karma karayati tam yam ebhyo lokebhya unninishati tate. Eshu eva sadhu karma karayati yam adho ninishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Kaushitaki Upanishad 3.8. Similarly, the Mahabharata Vanaparva 31.27 states, Agyo Jantaranisho Yam Atmanak Sukadukka Yoho Ishara Prevdito Gachet Swargam Vash Abram Evasha. The living entity is completely dependent in all his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutta 2.134 confirms this. Vaishamya naigrinye na sa pekasvat tatahi darshiyati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshur unminitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, this verse follows from the previous verse, which said the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. And the modes of material nature are under the control of the Lord. And so therefore it says in the next verse, the one we read, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone sinful or pious activities. So it's important to remember that as angsha, or part and parcel of the Lord, we have minute, angsha means a minute particle, we have minute independence. We have his qualities in a minute degree, not in the same degree. His beauty is ever astounding. Our beauty is, what can I say, skin deep, you know, it's fleeting. And every other quality. We have some wealth, you know, I got some money in the bank, okay. You know, but it's nothing compared to what he has. Ishavashamidam sarvam, he owns everything, you know. So that's important to remember. That's part of the basic knowledge that we need in order to see the importance of surrendering to the Lord, to try more and more to dovetail our desires and activities with his desires. That's the whole Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna doesn't want to do that. He's got his argument, he's got his reasons why he doesn't want to fight in the battle, right? But they're all based on the bodily concept of life. He's looking across, you know, he famously asks Krishna to take the chariot between the two armies, right? Not in the midst of the armies, but between the two armies. Which is, it's interesting, you know, this is just a little editorial sidelight, which you probably won't get from anyone else. The word madhye in Sanskrit can mean either between or in the midst. And in the midst means, you know, if you're in the middle, if you're in the midst of the two armies, only can Krishna do that. Krishna can only he can do that because he can expand himself and he can be in the middle of one army and in the middle of another army. In the midst means you're surrounded by something, right? I'm in the midst of the forest, means you're surrounded by trees and animals and things like that. But, so the word madhye can mean either midst or between. But the English word midst cannot mean between. And the word between cannot be midst. You see it? There's several things that happen like that. We'll probably take the Sanskrit word and the qualities of it, which can mean several, he puts into the English word. So therefore, in the various midsts in the beginning here, describing the chariot between the two armies became betweens. I don't know if you'll see it in this edition, but hopefully it'll get printed. So anyway, so we have Krishna's qualities in minute degree. So the Supreme Lord he is overseeing everything, right? He's right with us, next to us, in our heart as the super soul. There's a soul and a super soul. There's this wonderful analogy, famous analogy. It's in the Bhagavatam, but it's more famous from the Upanishads. Two birds in the same tree, right? Our body is like a tree, and the fruits of the tree are little sense gratification you can enjoy. You see, so the soul is in the body, but he identifies with the body, and he perceives some way to enjoy some sense gratification. So the super soul, he's not enjoying anything. He's just watching. He's overseeing. And he's giving us the knowledge, the intelligence, to be able to fulfill our material desires. But he's trying to give us good instruction that this is not to our best interest. It's to our worst interest. Because anything you enjoy through the senses and the mind and the body, then that induces you to try to enjoy it again. Right? So it plants a desire seed in your heart. And that's our material conditioning. So many desires, they develop as we grow up, right? A little child has a certain kind of desire, doesn't know what sex is or anything, but he wants to go to the pool, he wants to play this. I went through a stage when I was a kid when I became very expert at flipping baseball cards. I could stand there, I had it down. I was at 1, 2, I could get 10 or 12 heads in a row, And so I proceeded to win all my friends' baseball cards. So I got their cards, but I lost their friendship. So I was all alone, And then but I had collected without buying one pack of cards. I had the whole set. I forget what year, 58, 57, something like that. And it was Stan Musial. That's a famous name if you know baseball, right? You remember Stan Musial? And so that was also an extra card in there. And then I kept that. I had it in a cigar box. What else, They fit perfectly. And then I grew up. And so, but I had this full set of cards from 1957. So anyway, I eventually went to college in 65. So that's, a bunch of years later. And my baseball cards stayed on my little room, in the apartment I grew up in. So my college career, thank God, didn't last very long. I dropped out after 3 or 4 months and came home and was staying, my apartment. And I noticed my cards were gone. I said, Dad, what happened to my baseball cards? Well, we cleaned out your room and we threw them away. Now that as years went by, that full set from 1957 came to be worth $10,000, $20,000 from collectors, the rare, things like that. Anyway, it was just, what could I do? This is But that's the way material life goes, You become very interested in something. I mean, you may forget when you're adult, but as you mature, you go through 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old. So your desires change, right? You become more aware and you're able to do certain things. And then the big change comes 13, 14, you know what I'm talking about. So that's the way it works just normally. And the super soul, and there's a wonderful purport in the second canto, I think, describing how by the presence of one's own intelligence, you can logically infer the presence of the super soul. Because the intelligence is the way that the super soul, he informs the intelligence of how to do things, what to avoid. You're getting all this inspiration. Now, there's also what we know as conscience, right? The conscience. I want to do this, but I know it's bad, so I'm not going to do it. You have kind of a moral structure, Of course, then you say, well, the heck with that, I'm going to do it anyway, So that conscience is the voice of the super soul. So this purport talks about that, how the very presence of the conscience and the way the intelligence works, you can infer that that God is within and He's giving you all this intelligence. It's a very wonderful purpose. I don't have it here, but maybe next week I'll share it with you. So the same idea is here. The Lord gives us the intelligence to do everything. He gives us the senses. Everything is coming from Him. But He doesn't get any of the karma. He's not responsible for our nonsense. That's our own will. We have that minute independence. Now, if you're lucky, you're fortunate, you're intelligent, and you have some credits in, serving the devotees, even unknowingly. So, that agyata sukriti can also build up. So you get the chance to associate with a devotee and get the idea of devotional service, which is like a seed. If it's a pure devotee, you can plant the seed of pure devotion in your heart, and that's very fortunate. Brahmande brahmante kom bhagyavan jeev Guru Krishna pasare pai bhakti lata bij. Brahmanda, the word Brahmanda means Brahma's egg. In other words, the universe, right? And Anda is an egg. So you think about it. And when you read the Bhagavatam, it's so detailed. It describes the creation, and that all the universes are encased in layers of the material energy. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind. And each one of the subsequent layers is 10 times bigger than the previous one. So there's a lot of covering and a little space in between. So this is where we exist. Garbhadakshay Vishnu is there, and in fact, Garbha means a fetus, because he's like in an enclosure, an egg, you see. So he's lying there in the water that he himself created from his perspiration, so he can have some place to lie. And it's got Ananta Sheshanag and everything, so that's the creation. But, so we're in this, situation, and we're given the intelligence to, if we don't have any access to devotional service or anything, and we're completely identified with the body, all right? The super soul is giving us intelligence, how we can engage in our senses and sense pleasure and so forth. But there's a price to pay for that. The price is that, again, birth, old age, disease, and death. And because of, there's rules and regulations, and if you don't know them, you're going to violate them, performing sinful activity. And then you can very well lose this human form of life. You'll get a body, you continue, trying to enjoy, but it's not a human body. And you have no option in the dog's body, cat body, bear body, whatever, to understand this philosophy. There's no question that the bear is saying, okay, I'm going to control my senses. I'm not going to be a regular bear. I'm going to be a yogi bear. I'm sorry, that just came out. That just came. I mean, that was Krishna. But the bears don't do that. Now, I can't resist telling this pastime. Some of you have read the CC, that Lord Chaitanya in his travels to South India, sometimes he would go a long time, he's in the jungle, so he's in his Jharkhand jungle, and he's with his one aide. He had a Brahmin, I forget his name, he was traveling with him, help carrying things, So they're in the jungle. So there's some lions there, and there's some deer, and all these animals. So Lord Chaitanya is just chanting, he's chanting. And they all get into chanting. He gets the animals to chant. And even the lions and the deer, they give up their normal, and the lions and the deer, like this, there's description, and there's how they're kissing each other. They're embracing when they're chanting, So he could do that. But it's interesting because we're human beings. So, but if we also get inspired by the kirtan, by the holy name, and this is really the tremendous blessing of this age, then we can also begin chanting and dancing, and we depart from our normal conditioning. You become, and if you really get into Krishna consciousness, you become like a different person, isn't it? Your character can change, all for the better, hopefully, And you realize that, from reading the philosophy and understanding that you've been saved. You've been saved from who knows what, because without that direction, you're going to perform, especially at this age, get involved in all kinds of sinful things and bad, and waste your time. So it really is, and that's why when we come together, those who come regularly to the Mangalarti, the first line of the first verse of the first song we sing, which is the Guru Vashtaka, 8 verses in honor of the Guru. Sangsara davan hanalidha loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam. In those 2 lines, you're appreciating, you're expressing your gratitude. And it's a wonderful, metaphors. Sangsara davana. Davana is a forest fire. I was burning in the forest fire of samsara, birth and death. I didn't know it, Davana lidha. Lidha means suffering. Loka, the people in general, or anyone who takes shelter. Tranaya, but he's delivered. The word tranaya means to deliver, He's delivered us from that forest fire. So he has the nature of a cloud pouring down the rain of mercy, and giving us the philosophy, the understanding, and the means, the simple chanting of the holy name, to deliver it, to extinguish that forest fire, and giving us the hope of deliverance, eternal deliverance. So that sense of gratitude should be there. For Srila Prabhupada, who sacrificed so much to give us what we have, everything we have, the building, the mantra, the books, the prasadam, everything. So, let's go back to the verse today. The Supreme Lord doesn't assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So he's observing. He gives us the Maiduna dependence, which we've misused up to now. But now he's giving us the option, due to sending his great devotees, and we have association, and we have the scripture and so forth, to use our intelligence and change the direction and the course of our lives by serving the Lord, so that He empowers us, and He also arranges that we have a temple like this. How did this happen? Because a whole bunch of devotees back in the 70s were inspired to get this temple, paint it, carve it, do it, get the deities. You know the story how the deities came here? You may not remember it. There was a devotee, I think his name was Bhakta Das. I think I remember him. In the early days, he was the president here. And he ordered deities from India. But, things got so hectic, he had forgotten that he ordered them. Okay, so he gets a call from the airport. You have 2 boxes here. You want to pick them up? So, really, I wonder what they are, So he goes to the airport, and there's the boxes. He opens the boxes. There's Radha Giridhari staring up at him. So they came, they had the installation. It wasn't here. It was down at the temple they had near the park. I was able to see that. It was mainly a house. It was a big house. But it was right next to the park, And they used to be able to do Harinam in the park. And actually, I saw that because Prabhupada came down here in 75. I think it was doing Govardhan Puja, because that's, the temple is famous. And he came down, and, there was no way of getting into that little house. I mean, the house was filled with people. I was looking through the window on the outside, But he had a talk in the park. They set up this beautiful picture of the Panchatattva. I'll show it to you sometime. It's in black and white, and he was sitting in front of that giving the lecture. And a unique fact of that or incident in that time was that there was a Babaji that he initiated. He was the first and last Babaji in ISKCON. And this fellow, I don't know, Lomi, I think his name was. I think he was from Detroit. And he had some, he had gone to the doctor, and he had, some problem in his heart, and he found that he had his heart condition, that the doctor told him it's fatal, you're going to die from this not too long from now. So he told Prabhupada that, and he asked Prabhupada if he could take Babaji and then go to Mayapur and just chant. That was his idea. So Prabhupada said yes, and he initiated him as a Babaji. So, the devotees came, I think, to a couple of sannyasis with, this thing. And here comes this guy out of a car, and he's got the loincloth, all in white. The Babaji dress is a little different. And so everyone is, whoa, this is our one and only Babaji. Wow, But then what happened is that he went to Mayapur. He was able to go to Mayapur. And basically he just wanted to chant, So, it wasn't so much in favor of the temple authorities who wanted him to do some service, so he more or less made his own little way. He got a little bhajan kutir, And the devotees would see him, and, there's on Alomi, Babaji, he's chanting. But then they didn't see him after a while, and they didn't, what happened. And so I think Prabhupada came, he asked what happened. And what happened, he went to a doctor in Navadvip, maybe, I don't know if it was an Ayurvedic doctor or not, but he was able, to give him a diagnosis, how you doing, and he said, you don't have a fatal condition, you've gotten better, He said, as soon as he heard that, he went back to Detroit. So Babaji is special. A Babaji is, Babaji means, it's like a sannyasi, but it's different in the sense that it's completely renounced condition, and they generally have a different look. It's like the 6 Goswamis are actually Babajis. right? They didn't travel all over. They did some traveling, but they were basically in Vrindavan. And you live very austerely, and your main activity is just bhajan all day. Like Haridas Thakur was like a Babaji. He just chanted 300,000 names a day. And he's the Acharya, the Namacharya. But they have a different profile. Like we have, what is it? Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. He's in our line. He's on the altar there, and he wasn't an initiated disciple of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but he was a Shiksha disciple of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself was a Shiksha disciple of Jagannatha Das Babaji. He was not initiated by Jagannatha Das Babaji. There's another sannyasi he was initiated by. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, he didn't actively preach, although people came to him to hear him speak. But he was spending all his day, and he so much didn't want to be bothered because people would come to him and they would ask for ashirvad, right? Some benediction. My child is ill, can you please cure him? That type of thing. So that's not Babaji, what Babaji wanted. So he said, okay, they're going to come to see me. I'm setting up my bhajan kutir next to the laboratory. If they come, they're going to have to do that. And so one very wealthy man came and said, oh, I want to surrender to you. What do you want me to do? He said, okay, you really want to surrender? Don't go back home. You just stay here with me in the laboratory. He was gone. He didn't want to stay. Anyway, that's just. But he had done parakram in Vrindavan for many years, going around and stayed there. Then he heard about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or maybe Bhaktivinoda Thakur came to Vrindavan, I don't know the history. And he was so impressed with his erudition and his knowledge about Chaitanya Vaishnavism that he wanted to hear from him, so he set up in Mayapur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur built a little bhajan kutir. I don't know, if you ever go to Mayapur, across the river, you'll see Bhaktivinoda's house that he had, and next to it is the kutir of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. He was able to stay there. So it's a different kind of service. It's completely like internal. They don't go out and actively preach, But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was a sannyasi, which means that he was traveling, he was preaching, and he was taking up Lord Chaitanya's order to spread Krishna consciousness as far as possible. And so he did that amazingly. He set up, all these Gaudiya maths, and anyway, if you want to, there's a book which is like big. I don't know, is it 3 volumes? The Bhakti Vikas Swami's book. But he very kindly made it available in PDF format if you want to read it. A very wonderful biography of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So yeah, Babaji is a different mode. So just back to the text here. So the Lord doesn't assume anyone's sinful activities because we're responsible for it. But if we are embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers the real knowledge. So this ignorance, what is the Bhagavad Gita? It's full of knowledge. It's kind of trying to dispel our many lifetimes of ignorance about who we are, what really goal of life is, the existence of God, what is our relationship. All these things are complete mysteries. And in the modern age, atheism is so prominent, And even if there's religion, it's often materially motivated, It's not bona fide. So the knowledge we're getting here can give us the motivation and the inspiration and the faith to do those things by which the ignorance can be fully dispelled, and we can start acting for our own real best interest. The conditioned soul is always acting against his own best interest because he's doing things that is thinking for his enjoyment or his welfare, but actually it's just keeping him bound up to the material world. And when death comes, everything is taken away. All your body, your relationships, whatever wealth you have, whatever fame you have, it's all gone. That's why Krishna says, Mrityu Sarvaharashchaham, in the 10th chapter. He said, as death, I take everything away. So the atheists don't believe in God, they see him as death. The devotees believe in God, at death they see Krishna and go back to Godhead. but the atheists don't get to see Krishna, they just experience death, the horrible situation. Everything is taken and you don't know where you're going. So we don't want to be in that situation when it comes. All right, any questions on these points and this purport? We're prone to be influenced by ignorance due to our limited power. So we need to take shelter of the powerful. And the Lord, but more practically, the Lord's empowered representative. You see, Shaktivesh. And that's Srila Prabhupada and his genuine representatives. All right, moving on, text 16. Jnanena tutara jnanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham aditya jnanam prakashayati tatparam. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Purport. Those who have forgotten Krishna must certainly be bewildered, but those who are in Krishna consciousness are not bewildered at all. It is stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, Sarvam Jnana Plavena, Jnanagni Sarvakarmani, and Nahi Jnane Sadrisham. So let's see, what do these mean? Sarvam Jnana Plavena. So the Jnana Plavena means like the boat of knowledge, okay, to take us across the ocean of ignorance. Jnanagni, the fire of knowledge, can burn all our karmic reactions, sarva karmani. And nahi jnane nisadrisham, there's nothing as important as knowledge, nothing as potent as knowledge, real, transcendental knowledge. Knowledge is always highly esteemed. And what is that knowledge? Perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna, as is said in the 7th chapter, 19th verse. Bahonam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyate. After passing through many, many births, when one perfect in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna, or when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him as everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime. So, bahonam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyate. Then what do you do when after many of Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha? You understand that Vasudeva is everything, in the sense that everything is the energy of Krishna. Vasudeva is another name for Krishna, indicating he's the son of Vasudeva. Vasudeva and Vasudeva. Samahatma Sadhu, but such a great soul is very rare, to be able to come to that point of knowledge that you're inspired to surrender. But that's what we want to try to do. That's what we're doing. Okay. After passing through many, many births, when one in perfect knowledge surrenders to Krishna, or when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him as everything is revealed in the sun in the daytime. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity were God, then how could he become bewildered by nescience? Does God become bewildered by nescience? If so, then nescience, or Satan, would be greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and, under him, learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all nescience, as the sun drives away darkness. Even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still might not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect bona fide Krishna conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Sri Krishna therefore stated in the 2nd chapter, 2:12, that every living being is individual and that the Lord is also is individual. That says, what is it? Naham Natvevaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadipa natseva nabhavishara sarvevaya matakpalam. Never have I not existed, nor you, Arjuna, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. That's 2:12. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night we see everything as one in the darkness, but in the daytime, when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality in spiritual life is real knowledge. That's a very nice phrase. So the idea of knowledge as light and ignorance as darkness. That's why we say before every class, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. So I was born Ajnana Timirandasya, covered by the dark, blinded by the darkness of ignorance. But my spiritual master, actually what it says is he has this instrument, like for curing the eyes, and he put the ointment of knowledge on there, open your eyes. Just like we want to have our eyes fixed, or treated with the salve of prema. Premanjana chudita bhakti velochanena. It's a famous verse. Then you can see Krishna within your heart at every moment. So that's the idea there. At night we see everything as one in the dark, but at daytime when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality in spiritual life is real knowledge. So we do not want to merge, right? Merging is like going to hell. It's in the Shastra. Kaivalyam narakayate. Naraka means hell, and Kaivalyam means oneness. So this is a verse Prabhupada would quote often by Prabodhananda Saraswati, the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, a very wonderful devotee. And he wrote a book called Chaitanya Chandramrita, the nectar moon of Lord Chaitanya. I recorded that verse, if you know that book. If you want to get the recording, just write to me. And one of the verses, the most famous Prabhupada has made by quoting it so much, Kaivalyam naratayate. Now he's describing that devotee who has been empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya, which comes through embracing his desire that we spread Krishna consciousness and be Krishna conscious. So what's the result of that? Kaivalyam narakayate tudashakpur akasha pushpayade durdantandriya kala sarpa patali protkata dangshrayate vishwam purna sukhayate vidimahindra adishtakitayate yat karunya kataksha vaibhavatam tam gauramevastama. So he says, for one who has been empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya, karunya kataksha, this kataksha is a sidelong, karunya is mercy, then here's the result. He understands kaivalyam narakayate, that merging in oneness with the absolute Brahman is like going to hell. Why? Because there's no bhakti there. For bhakti to take place, there needs to be three things: the bhakta, the Lord, and the bhakti, the relationship. But in the Brahma Jyoti, there's none of those things. I mean, the Lord is there by his effulgence, but he's not there in his personal form, so he can't receive any bhakti. And you're not there either in any form. You're just there in your infinitesimal form as a spirit soul, but you don't have any senses, you don't have any body. So where's the bhakti? You can't perform artik, you can't even chant the name, you can't do anything. You just be conscious, like going to hell. So that's the first thing. Tridashapur akasha pushpayate. Then the Tridashapur stands for the many heavenly planets. There's like 33 million demigods. We know a few of the top ones, Indra and Varuna and Brahma, of course, and Shiva. But there's so many. And so Tridashapur, Akasha. So are you interested in going to heavenly planets? No. It's just like a sky flower, something imaginary. Who cares? Forget it. And then the third one is interesting. Durdan dendriya kala sarpa patali prodkata dangstrayate. Durdanta means difficult to control, right? Indriya, Durdan Indriya, your senses. You see, without Krishna consciousness, it's very difficult to control. Kala sarpa, they're like poisonous serpents. Sarpa, serpent, same thing. Kala means time, but it also means poison. Kala sarpa, patali prodkata dangstrayate. So are you afraid of these serpents? We should be. I mean, they're poisonous serpents. It means our senses can take the mind anywhere and destroy us. But the serpents have their fangs removed. So they look like they're the same senses, but they can't do you any harm. In fact, your senses are necessary for serving Krishna. So they become your friends. And then he says, patadi prodkata strike, durdan dendriya kala sarpali prodkata. Kaivalyam narakayate tudashapur akasha pushpayate durdan dendriya kala sarpali prodkata dangstrayate vishwang purna sukhayate. you see the whole universe is full of joy. Now you can't have that vision if you're in a material consciousness. You know, as soon as you get some dangerous situation or something happens, or an enemy calls you up or writes you an email, you know, then it's not full of joy. It's full of danger, and it's full of unhappiness and depression and a little bit of sense gratification, you know. So, but for the devotee who's relishing at every moment the service of Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet, then there's joy everywhere, you know. Vishwang. And the great demigods like Brahma and Shiva and Indra, you would give them respect, but you're not ready to worship them. As far as that goes, they're no more insignificant than insects. That's what this says. This is classic Prabodhananda Saraswati. So, how does this come about? By being empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya, by becoming Krishna conscious and trying to spread Krishna consciousness. So this is, you know, you're not at all attracted or fascinated by the Brahman, you know, merging into, you don't care. You'd much rather hear, you know, the holy name and meditate on Lord Krishna's lotus feet and cook up some nice halva so you can offer to the Lord and do so many million services. That's what the devotee is. One is enlightened with knowledge by which nation is destroyed. His knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So that's you know, what we're trying to attain, this knowledge, and the knowledge should inspire us to act in a certain way and stop acting in the other way. You know, just like I give this example so many times. The notice on the pack of cigarettes. When I was a kid, the cigarettes were like 50 cents a pack. Okay, now they're what, $6, $7 a pack? Really? People are paying that much to kill themselves that way? Krishna. So anyway, but I'm sure they still have the notice on there. I think they have pictures now, right? Do they have people coughing their lungs out? I mean, I was in the hospital. I would see people with emphysema. It's such a tragic thing. You know, you can hardly breathe. And you know, you've smoked so long. My friend John here, who got some books from Marcy, you know, and he's often sitting on one of the church steps when I take my walk. Hey, Hare Krishna, John. Hare Krishna, teacher. He calls me teacher. And but I don't see him reading those books. He's smoking his cigarette, you know. So that, you know, these self-destructive. This is the mood of conditioned life. It's kind of self-destructive. Even unknowingly, you're getting some pleasure, and after a while, it's not a pleasure. It's just I got to have one, otherwise I feel horrible, you know. And that's you're bound up by all these things. And we had a lady here she used to come when I first started this class back in '89, '90, '91. She would come sometimes alone, you know. And I said, first her name was Phyllis, and she got initiated. Padmavati, I can't give you a class alone. You know, some lone woman. So you have to find someone else. So see where they drag other ladies to come, you know. I have 2, 3, 4 people, you know. We didn't have anything like this, no YouTube. But she joined late. She was already in her 40s, you know, when she joined. And she had been a smoker for many years, you know, serious smoker. And she had COPD. Some of you know what COPD is. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And eventually she died of it. She called me, I think this is it, but I'm going to the hospital. I said, what's the matter? I can't breathe. This was on Ekadashi, and I forget exactly what day, but it was January 2011. It's been 14 years. And we went down to went to the hospital with Rajendanandana. He was there when I got there. He was such a wonderful devotee. And so we started chanting. You know, she was in the hospital, but we started singing Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Then her daughter and 2 sons came. They had flown in. They lived in different cities in America. They flew in. And so they weren't there with us chanting, but they were in an anteroom. And then they met with the doctors, and the doctors told them there's no chance that she can, you know, survive this. So they decided, okay, so we'll, you know, pull the plug, whatever it's called, you know. So they told us that. We said, well, we want to keep chanting here because it's important that you hear. They said, no, this is a family thing. And I said, well, what are we going to do? So we walked just down the little walk in the hospital. We didn't go to any other floor. There was a waiting room. We waited there. And then after 15 minutes, one of the sons came in and said, you better come back in here because she's not going. You know, they took her off the air ventilator. You know, that's usually it. But she was She was hanging on. She was breathing. Because she wasn't hearing Hare Krishna, she was still awake. So we went in there and chanted, and about 2 minutes later she was gone, and she looked very peaceful, and that I've been at the bedside of a good number of devotees, at least half a dozen. They usually want me to come and chant. But that's it, that's an auspicious leaving. Even if you're not completely pure, you come back for one more life or something, you'll be born in a family of devotees, you'll have all ability to, continue. And then we had Shamali. I wasn't there, but she was in Alatra. I had visited her many times with her husband, Bhishma Dev, who had been the temple president here for some time. And she got cancer. She was under 40. She was 36 or something like that. So Yamuna went out there and stayed, and Parashakti, who was the mother, she went out there and spent some time, then she had to come back. And Yamuna, and I would call and I would share some of my poems, on the phone. And they was grateful for that. But she had the great blessing, her wonderful guru, Indra would call her in from Vrindavan. And he would spend an hour at a time on the phone with her and encourage her and preach to her, so she was spoke. And then Yamuna, he described that we had a wonderful ceremony after, her disappearance. And he was explaining that she was so peaceful, when it happened. He was just visualizing the Vaikuntha airplanes coming down and taking her back. She wasn't in any anxiety, terror, or, which I'd seen, when I worked in the hospital, the difference. So that's, we should try to become as serious about Krishna consciousness as possible, and we'll be ready for that test when it comes. Okay, let's do one more. Text 17, right? Yeah. Tad buddhiyas tadatmanas tannishtas tad padayana gacchanta punaravrittim jnana-nirdhuta kalmashaha. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Purport: the Supreme Transcendental Truth is Lord Kṛṣṇa. The whole Bhagavad Gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the version of all Vedic literature. Paratattva means the Supreme Reality, who is understood by the knowers of the Supreme as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the last word in the Absolute. There is nothing more than that. The Lord says, Mattak patatarang nanyat kinchadasti dhananjaya. This is back in the seventh, I think in the 7th chapter. Impersonal Brahman is also supported by Krishna. Brahmanohi pratishtaham. That's in chapter 14, near the end, I think the last verse. Therefore, in all ways, Krishna is the Supreme Reality. One whose mind, intelligence, faith, and refuge are always in Krishna, or in other words, one who is fully in Krishna consciousness, is undoubtedly washed clean of all misgivings and is in perfect knowledge of everything concerning transcendence. A misgiving is a doubt. A Krishna-conscious person can thoroughly understand that there is duality, simultaneous identity, and individuality in Krishna. And, equipped with such transcendental knowledge, one can make steady progress on the path of liberation. So, it starts with the intelligence. You notice how the intelligence is first here. Tad buddhiyas tadatmanas. And I always like to quote this verse. You probably heard it before. I put it in the poem. But this morning we were discussing there's akama, savakamava, mokshakama dhanadi, and Prabhupada, that wasn't the verse we were on, but Prabhupada quoted in the purport, because that was the theme of the verse. And that is that this verse says from the 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, verse 10, 2nd canto, 3rd chapter, verse 10, whether one is free of all material desires, or full of all material desires, or desires liberation, still one should serve the Lord with intense devotion. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So I like to mention this, you probably heard it before, that Krishna consciousness is actually a way of training your desires. You're purifying your desires. You may not even know how it's happening, but it's happening. By the chanting of the holy name, that's always the main process. but also the deity worship, other services, hearing the Bhagavad-gītā, the Shastras. We should be becoming more and more eager to experience Krishna consciousness and the higher levels, to feel the rasa, the taste. And so it's really an evolution of desire. And so this verse connects the evolution of desire with the awakening of transcendental intelligence. Many of you have heard it before, you heard these classes. Kamadinam. Prabhupada would quote this verse. He would also say Kamadinam. And it seems like it should be, but it is not. It's Kamadinam. Kamadinam katina katita palita durnideshas. Tesham jata mayana karuna. No mercy. My material desires have not shown me any mercy. Tesham jata mayana karuna natrapa no prashanti. Utsrijayatan atayadupate sampratam labdha buddhis pamayatak sharanamabayam mamdiyung swatmadase. This was spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in his instructions for 2 months when he was in Benares. He instructed him more than any other individual devotee. So what does it mean? It means, so the Lord Chaitanya, in this verse, I think it's written, according to Bhaktisiddhanta, it was written by Madhavendra Puri, but he's taking the role of a conditioned soul who is now on the verge of being saved, although he's already saved, no question of Madhavendra Puri. But he says, in how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. That's what we should feel like. By cultivating the intelligence, just like the warning on the cigarette pack. The idea is that somehow, you want the cigarette, you need the cigarette, but you look on it and it says, oh, it's dangerous to my health. Now I think it says it may very well produce cancer or emphysema. I think it's more explicit. Then why should I do this? So it's bad for you. You shouldn't do it, you see. And if you have enough strength behind that intelligence, then you can say, to heck with it, I'm throwing this away. Why should I kill myself with this? But unless your intelligence is strengthened, you get to be a slave of those things. Alcohol, anything like that, addiction. So we don't want to be in that situation. Okay, something a little more upbeat, then we'll adjourn. Okay. I'll give you the reference. It's in the 22nd chapter of the Madhya Lila. I'll give you the reference exactly. Okay. There's nothing more sweet than this one. Nitam napanamanitam ke natapitam bhayakwame mulari. Iti samudila tantam bhuma balam namami gopalam. Kathy, you know this verse now, right? You've heard me chant it before? I think so. Yeah, I was taking breakfast out there, and then Hannah and Mahima came behind me and said, we've been rehearsing. I said, really, what is it? And I did this one with the English also. And somebody was taking a picture, a movie, and they sent it around. So this is a beautiful verse by Bilvamangal Thakur, the author of Krishna Karnamrita. It's not in the Krishna Karnamrita. Meditating on Krishna throwing a tantrum. Who stole my butter? Who drank my milk? And where can my flute be found? I bow to the cowherd child who shouts these words as he rolls on the ground. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.